What's coming out of me has a lot to do with what I've taken in growing up in Philadelphia. That's the main reason why I decided to stay here, and I always will. Hey, this is DJ Jazzy Jeff on We Live in Philly, baby, on Radio 1.
Music in Philly, baby. Music Soul Child.
Poetry, The Roots, Kindred,
Jill Scott,
Larry Gold,
Will Smith.
In West Philadelphia, born and raised, on the playground is where I spend most of my days.
Victor Duplain,
Lyle,
Ursula Rucker,
Jaguar,
Jazzyfatnastees,
Quest, Aaries. We come from Philly, baby. Wow.
New York, LA, Detroit, Atlanta. The last decade has seen many places lay claim to the title of musical capital of the US. But there's one city which has frequently been overlooked. It might have been on the down low for a while, but the last few years have seen Philadelphia, on the east coast of the US, between New York and DC, regain its status with fans as a mecca for the soulful side of black music. I'm Gilles Peterson, and recently I took a trip to the city of brotherly love to find out what makes the place tick, and why the music that's made there turns out so special.
My name is King Britt, and I'm a producer, artist. I was born and raised in Southwest Philly. So I grew up with Jazzy Jeffs, Will Smith, Cash Money, all the great groups in Philadelphia that were really changing the way America and the world listens to music now. So they took R&B to a whole other level.
Every city has their talent.
String arranger Larry Gold, who works with much of the young talent coming out of the city.
It's that Philadelphia's talent is, R&B. It's always been. If you wanted to make records in this town and you couldn't make R&B records, forget it.
With all of that background, jazz, soul, and hip-hop, growing up in Philly, we have a lot of high standards. Everyone in Philadelphia, be it your Jill Scotts, your Victor Duplays, whoever, we're all influenced by the same things because we grew up with high quality music.
you're always fighting against a constant pressure of peers and others and the standards of other people.
Sometimes we get overshadowed by New York and what was going on up there. But a lot of things that was going on in New York, they were getting from Philadelphia secretly.
Nou Ra has recently returned to the UK after living in Philly for the best part of a decade.
The distance between New York and Philadelphia is comparable to the distance between London and Brighton.
Philly has a musical community. Once you are here and you're a musician, you definitely feel like there's some sort of kinship in this city. My name is Tracey Moore, one half of Jazzyfatnastees, and you felt immediately like you had people that you were kindred to. Philly definitely houses that energy.
I really believe that the energy there is different from anywhere else in America. There's always been a history of really, really positive music coming out of that city.
Building on the hip-hop foundations laid by Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, Cash Money and MC Marvelous and Schoolie D, the Roots came along at the dawn of the 90s to become the leaders of the Philadelphia underground scene. But they had a different take on hip-hop to their sample-based peers up the coast in New York City. Here's Amir Thompson, aka Questlove, drummer and heartbeat of the Roots.
The music that we grew up on as musicians was now being sampled. And hip-hop was kind of academic back then, so they weren't doing like elaborate arrangements or full-blown pop arrangements. My vision for what I was going to contribute to the hip-hop world was that I was going to recreate those breakbeats that we grew up on and do it so good the average music fan would embrace it and a hip-hop head would embrace it. So what we did was we just had a do-or-die meeting. And we said, yo, we gotta bring it to the people.
The Roots are amazing in as far as in a time when no one played instruments in popular music, no matter whether it was rhythm and blues, funk, rap, pop, no one was really playing. They were playing, they were a band. And I mean, especially in R&B and black music, because everyone was sampling everything. They were a band, they kept it alive. The nuances of the Roots' speciality is their live performance.
We just took advantage of a dormant city. We performed on the streets. Cat came up to us, play my barbecue next week. Play his barbecue. At the barbecue, play my poetry slam. Play the poetry slam. Next week, do our college thing. Do the college thing. At the college thing, do our college thing. College thing. Do our college radio thing. Do our college radio. Hey, come to our club. You know, it's a rock club, but I think they'll like you guys.
This is Nou Ra on We Live in Philly, baby. 7 years ago, I moved over to Philadelphia, working with The Roots as their tour manager. They are the spine. They are the crux of this movement that's happening. And the Jill Scotts, the Bilals, the Musics, you know, all these people, the Erykah Badu's even, I mean, I know she's not from Philly, but a lot of those people have joined a community that began with 5 people, The Roots.
They make great records, and they work hard at making great records and unusual records.
I remember the first time I saw The Roots. And was like, that is what we need. We need a band. We need them. They'll be the perfect band for us.
Yo, this is Scratch from the legendary Roots crew, and you're checking out We Live in Philly, baby, on radio. There's no question that the Roots have affiliations with everything that takes place in Philadelphia when it comes to any artist. Like, when people first ever heard Jill Scott, they heard her on You Got Me. Like, they never heard her anywhere else but You Got Me. Beanie Siegel, you ain't hear him anywhere but Adrenaline, which after that, you know, both of their careers like took off to a whole new height. Erykah Badu on her first album, we produced 4 to 5 songs. You know, music, I produced both intros to the last 2 albums and 2 songs. Basically, somehow, some shape, form, or fashion, it flows through us.
Once we got established, it took us 5 years to do it, but pretty much we just made a scene. And the thing is, I don't think there's anything particularly special about Philadelphia. A lot of people ask, like, oh man, what's in the water? Like, everything's coming out of Philly. I just think that a scene is just providing people with the opportunity to display their talents. That's all a scene is. And you have to be willing to sacrifice it. Now with us, we finally got a breakthrough record. We made a good 2-year sacrifice of we can either elevate and improve our lifestyle, or we can take that money that we were going to invest in that car or that house and start a scene. Buy some instruments, throw a few parties. It's like leaving out some food for the rats to come and get. And that's exactly what we did.
Make some noise. Make some noise. Make some noise. Make some noise. Make some noise.
This is Jill Scott and...
This is Gilles Peterson.
And...
We live in Philly, baby.
We live in Philly, baby.
We live in Philly, baby.
Radio 1. The Roots actually kept Philadelphia music alive. There were a lot of artists coming out of Philadelphia, but no one was paying attention.
It was at one of Philly's many open mic events that Questlove heard, saw, and met up with Jill Scott.
One night, I was at a non-Roots related poetry slam.
I sang this particular night.
This girl started off by singing Freaking You by Jodeci. So literally, you know, the woman was like, and now we have, every time I close my eyes. Like, it came from the back of the room. We're all looking at the back like, where the hell is that coming from?
I would assume he liked what he heard. He asked me to come to the studio, and of course I said yes.
So she came down to Sigma, the house of Gamble and Huff.
And I went, and Scott Storch was there, who is now a producer for Dr. Dre.
Her and Scott did about 5 songs together. Song number 4 was the song that just changed our lives.
I just sat down with Scott and we talked some talk for about 45 minutes, and then he played this melody. Da 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 da.
The second I heard You Got Me, that's the one.
History. There you have it.
Hey yo, me, I'm the type that's always catching a fly. Sometimes I got to be out at the height of the night. That's when she flip and get on some old that ain't right. It seems like I'm on the side and you're in love with your mic.
The track, which on the LP was sung by Erykah Badu, went on to win The Roots a well-deserved Grammy Award for Best Rap Performance.
Show your love, ladies and gentlemen. Show your love for Miss Jill Scott, representing Philadelphia. You know what I mean? Roots crew. That's what I'm talking about. All right?
Now, before The Roots, Philly's biggest hip-hop export was Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. Although Will packed his bags and left for Hollywood, Jeff stayed in his hometown and worked on bringing up the next generation of artists.
Everything is settled down. Feels so good, why not let it ride? Time tell if we should get closer later on or just for the night. On the floor, let the beats take us over.
Jazzy Jeff, we're at Touch of Jazz Studios in Philadelphia, and it's great to be here. We've heard so much about it. Tell us a little bit about what is a Touch of Jazz?
Touch of Jazz is a production company that houses a bunch of studios. Basically, what I sought out to do is find very creative people that were very open-minded, that liked all kinds of music, and wanted to put them in an environment that they had no boundaries. Some of the people that we've worked with at A Touch of Jazz: Jill Scott, Little Kim, Music Soul Child, Michael Jackson, Floetry, Kindred. From starting with the James Poysers and the Victor Duplays, we kind of established a direction and a mindset and a music that we were really looking to have. What I learned a long time ago is when you find someone talented, if you find a very good singer, they know at least 10 other good singers. If you know a good keyboard player, they know at least 10 other ones. And what happens is you always happen to find the next person or the next group of guys through the group of guys that you're working with. As long as you keep the environment the same and keep the goals the same, the personnel can always change. Hopefully this will be here long after I'm gone.
We come from Philly, baby. Wow.
Reach back into history and you'll find that Philadelphia was home to some of the most important musicians, songwriters and producers in the world. People like Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff and their Philadelphia International record label in the 70s defined the Philly sound. Larry Gold, who owns another studio in Philly called Imaginatively The Studio, was also part of that classic sound.
One of the beautiful things is Larry Gold is a very important piece of Philadelphia's past that helped bridge the gap with Philadelphia's present to take us into the future.
My name is Larry Gold. Mostly what I do is I do string arranging. I help young people make records. I own the studio in Philadelphia, PA, which is where the Roots record and Music Soul Child's recorded, and Jill Scott and Common and Bilal and anyone else you can think of and name.
With the renaissance that happened in Philadelphia, it's kind of like Larry Gold is ours. You know, he's from Philly. He's Philadelphia history. You know, some of these old Philly international records you put on, you know, Larry played the cello. Larry arranged the strings. So to have someone like that, wow, you know, this is cool because we have a little bit of the flavor from the 70s that we're carrying on with what we're doing today. And it's incredible that Larry is still a big part of it.
You know, I've always done good work for people, no matter whether it was the 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s. I mean, the Philly soul explosion now, it seems like all the great young artists like Christina and Justin and even Janet and all these, they want things to sound like some of the records we've been making because they like them. They feel honest to them, I guess.
Everybody is coming to Philadelphia. So it's no thing for me to come up here every day. Like yesterday, J-Lo was here. Oh, okay. Hey. You know what I mean? So it's like everybody. J-Lo, Mariah Carey, Justin was up here. Like, once it has some sort of appeal to people, it's hard to keep it down. Philadelphia, I guess, is the new Seattle. So I hear.
We live in Philly, baby.
We didn't have the bands like we did in the 70s to groom the musicians. And the only place that we had that groomed musicians was the church. Every Sunday, musicians would come in. That's the grooming ground for pretty much 99% of the musical talent in Philadelphia.
Now, the church has always had a huge influence on black music in the States, and that tradition is still alive and well in Philly, with people like James Poyser, producer and keyboard player for Erykah Badu, D'Angelo and Jaguar Wright, amongst others, coming straight out of the church. Here's Jazzy Jeff.
That's where James came from. You know, James got with A Touch of Jazz, and we just kind of took some of what he brought out of the church and put into music. Someone like James studied Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, and, you know, and growing up with that. And then growing up in the church, you start to mix the two together. You know, you start saying, okay, well, let me take this gospel chord and mix it with this Stevie chord, and I end up with something, and then next you know, you're ending up with your own style.
I'm not a church girl, so I was surprised at that people play the saxophone at church. I thought it was just, keys and vocalist and the choir and the long robes. That's what I thought. But surprisingly enough, there's a bass player at the church. There is a drummer at the church. There is, sax and the horn and trumpet player at the church. Who knew? But that's where a lot of the musicians are coming from. I'm so geeked about it. Who knew?
That's basically there being an outlet or a forum for musicians. Pretty much the only place for black musicians to form was at church.
How I got to learn so many of the musicians, we would have jam sessions that everybody would come to. After church on Sunday, everyone would come down. And it's amazing to see 3 of the guys that were in Jill's band used to come down there with their parents.
And now James is raising at least 9 keyboard players of his own in his own mode. And now they're raising their people and their people. I'm a little slow. I got like maybe 3 or 4 drummers that I'm handing the secrets to.
You couldn't help but to be better by hanging around Amir and hanging around guys like James and, all of the musicians that we had in the city. It's almost like as a basketball player, you cannot help but to improve your game if Michael Jordan is on your team.
Like, you can go to James's church and hear him and his cats sneak in commercial songs. They be playing reggae songs. Like, James goes to a church where his father's the head, and it's a Jamaican church. So, they're busy playing like Sean Paul songs and Beanie Man stuff. And the elders don't know, so they're just going over their heads. Meanwhile, the kids are like vocaling.
It's Gilles Peterson in Philadelphia, actually at the New Testament Church of God on 53rd and Whitby, and we've got James Poyser with us. This has been a really fantastic experience today. We've been here for a few days just kind of discovering about the whole way Philadelphia's been rolling and running and how come there's so much new stuff coming through. And I didn't come here thinking the church was that important, in the music making, but everything seems to be. Tell us a little bit about that.
The Black Church over here, the music is very, very, very much important. The gospel music is very big, and the musicians grow up in the church. They're free to play. I always say, if you know how to play gospel music, you can play any kind of music, because there's a spontaneity that you have to learn when you're playing in church. You never know what key the singer's going to sing in. You never know what style of song they're going to sing, so you have to be able to do that. And I guess that in turn helped create this musical revolution that's happening here. A lot of the artists and musicians and producers from Philly grew up in the church and grew up singing and playing in church. My father was the pastor of this church, and I could pretty much say I was born on one of those pews. I've been in this church all my life, and I've always been around the music scene. Music, again, is very important to the worship. And I grew up playing drums, and it's exciting seeing the drum over there playing. It's like, oh, I want to do that. And you sit in that section and you sing in the choir. And eventually I started playing for the choir and so forth, and moved to keyboards. And just a natural progression from there to just start playing in other churches and playing for local choirs, and then to just different recording artists and so forth and so forth and so forth. Let's not discount the Spirit of God. You pretty much go outside of yourself and sing in a way that you probably don't know how to sing, or play in a way that you never thought you could play, and moments like these happen. When I'm in town, I'm always in church, and if I can come from out of town to make it, I could have got a later flight today if I wanted to hang out, but I said, no, let me get back to go to church. It's my responsibility. That's my job.
The Black Lily Open Mic Night in Philly was the first platform outside a church for musicians and artists to develop their skills. It was set up by Questlove from The Roots and has become an institution for the city's soul scene.
Black Lily started as a series of jam sessions that started in my living room, which attracted every musician, every MC, every poet in the tri-state area.
It started out small, and the next thing you knew, everybody and their mother and their grandmother was there doing, just coming through, jamming.
We just used to convene there every Friday night at his house until the cops told us to go home.
Now, my house isn't that big, so, the next day, cigarette butts, broken plates, blunt ashes everywhere, Who had to clean that up?
It actually got to the point where it was so overwhelming for Amir at his house, but he called the cops on us. He called the cops on his own crib, saying, listen, you know, there's this really, really loud party next door.
He would call the cops.
He would go up in his room and call the cops.
Tell us to go home. I know they're all going to say, Amir was calling the cops. He was calling the cops. I have no idea who was calling the cops, but somebody was. They finally relocated it to the 5 spot. Anybody's come up in there just to either get a piece of the action, to get on stage, to perform, or just to watch. Janet Jackson's come through, Puffy's come through. Alicia Keys got on one night. She started, jamming.
You never know who's going to just show up. You never know, and that's what makes it even more exciting.
The best experiences for me is showing up and performing and then sitting down and watching all the other acts. You never know who's going to be there. In 1 week, it'll be some people you've never heard of, and the next week it'll be Alicia Keys for £5 or something.
Black Lily's been around for like a good 4.5 years. Jill, the first place she performed was at the Black Lily, and Kindred, which is another Philly group, we found Jaguar at the Black Lily. Bilal's come through, Common, Erykah Badu, Macy, music, and Aaries, and Floor Tree. Who's ever in town at the time and they just want to come out, join us, they do.
Hey y'all, it's Ayana. What's up y'all? This is Ayinka, and we are Aaries. I was there at the Lily and didn't expect it at all. And then Erykah Badu just gets up on stage and I'm like, oh my goodness, because I completely love her. And just to have her get up on the stage, not expect it, and she's just vibing with the band. It was just the coolest thing. And that's what you can expect at the Lily. Expect the unexpected.
The 5 spot is located on the corner of Market and Bank Street, in a tiny club that holds around 200 people. The Black Lily happens there every Tuesday night. Because of the Roots' touring commitments, the Jazzyfatnastees and Nou Ra took the reins of the club and put their spin on it.
Scratch from the legendary Roots crew. I'm just chilling Tuesday night here at Black Lily in Philadelphia, rocking an open mic in front of the crowd.
I'm here at the 5 spot.
Y'all ready for a little house party?
In Philadelphia, and we're having Black Lily.
I don't know, talk to me, people, talk to me. Y'all ready to hold some shit down? Y'all ready to be happy? All right, well, there's only one woman I know that can bring all these elements, all these emotions, bustling through your ass at one time, you know what I'm saying? Get you singing, shaking, shouting, and oh, my Lord. I want y'all to put your hands together for my sister celebrating her single release of Lies. Black Lily, put it up for Lady Alma!
Hey, this is Lady Alma, and we live in Philly, baby. I started working and doing the Black Lily maybe about almost a year now. It's like a rehearsal ground for me to just, rehearse all the new stuff. I get my approval from that audience.
Black Lily was born out of our frustration at these jam sessions because we were like, well, what about the girls? What about us? We're being shoved around, pushed, and no one's taking us seriously. They just want us to sing the hooks.
Seeing females get on and do their thing just made me feel good, like, wow, we do have a podium.
It's a Women in Music series. We're trying to create a scene.
Primarily, that's what you will see on stage. And then sometimes, the Roots will pop up and scratch and music. Glenn Lewis, they'll get up there as well.
To have a place that Jill Scott can go on tour and come home and say, you know what, I just did a new song and I want to test it out.
Black Lily is a place where you can try your way with it. And you can get your skills up there. It's not so judgmental. Well, it wasn't. I'm not so sure about now. Things do change once the media's eye is on it and Puffy comes through and, you get a lot of mimics. Particularly with Black Lily, you'll have vocalists that want to be the next Jill Scott or the next Music Soul Child or the next Jaguar or Floetry or whomever. You can't do it. Philly will definitely stand there and just look at you. You have to have your own stink or you're not gonna get that kind of love. Respect for trying, sure, but love, you're not gonna get it.
It separates the good from the bad, because if you're in the audience and they say, hey, you know, it's an open mic later on, and you're like, oh, maybe I can sing, maybe I can't, you know, then you know, like, oh, I can't do this. But if you're the sort of person that can say, hey, I can get on stage next to Jill Scott and I can rock it just as bad as she can, hey, you know, you're gonna go a long way.
We live in Philly, baby.
The Black Lily wasn't the only forum for musicians in the city. Two other contributors to the scene, Jazzy Jeff and King Britt, were also having their own jam sessions.
I have probably about 27, 28 DAT tapes of people in here, from Bilal laying on his back singing his heart out at 14 years old, to Grover Washington, to people that just came in that was just like, wow, you know, I heard on Sundays everybody comes down here and just gets into a jam session.
Different people are spawning off their own nights that were once Black Lily regulars, and it's spreading like wildfire.
That was our plan from the beginning, was to try to have something like this breeding in every major city.
Hopefully, now that Nou Ra is located in London, she'll kickstart it.
Yeah, Black Lily in London, that's the new plan, you know, that's why I'm back. And what people don't have here, you know, in London is essentially a forum for new artists that are, you know, unsigned and pretty much unheard of, to hone in their skills, explore their work on the same stages as people that perhaps they're inspired by, and it creates an environment for a new artist to really get off on their own shit. It does, I've been there, I did it.
If the finances are there, everybody can have a piece of Black Lily. If not, then they gotta come to Philly.
The Black Lily is spreading like a disease, okay? Coming to a town near you.
I'm watching you from afar, babe, the heaven's brightest star, babe. This is Kindred on We Live in Philly, baby, Radio 1.
It doesn't stop there. As well as husband and wife duo Kindred, there are plenty more artists waiting to burst out of the local scene. Here's Jill Scott.
Philly talks. You know, we talk a lot. Oh, I heard this and this was great, and you know, you'll get an email or 5 or 10. We heard it when Erykah Badu came out. We heard it when D'Angelo came out. It was so underground. You know, people were just talking. There's this guy, I don't know, Maxwell something. He's gonna be great.
A lot of the other entertainers that come from Philly, the Bilals and the Musics and the Jazzies and the Roots and the Jill Scotts, just having our names on their lips and talking about us in different circles helped to bring that attention to what we were doing, and it shined the spotlight on us as the spotlight had been shined on Philly.
All eyes are on Philly right now, and I just think it's just a good chance and opportunity for people to take advantage of it.
A couple of years ago at a Black Lily, a female duet from London showed up. They were called Floetry. Nobody had heard them, you know, and one's called the Songstress and one's called the Poetess. Put them on, they were wicked, unbelievably talented. And within 6 months, they were signed to a major label, and they ended up actually being the writers of the Michael Jackson song Butterflies. And I mean, you can't ask for a better American dream than that, can you? Within 6 months, you know, having a song on a Michael Jackson album. That's what Philadelphia is to me. Musically, it's the American dream.
A lot of the Black Lily regulars that are coming up, you know, that will be hopefully tomorrow's stars. You have Aaries, they're part of a music's camp. You have Floetry, part of the Jeff camp. You have Jazmine, who, I don't know, for God's sake, she's younger than Thriller. You know what I mean? Younger than Sign of the Times. I can imagine nobody being younger than Sign of the Times and having that wide range of a vocabulary in music.
This voice is so phenomenal. I'm amazed. It is ridiculous.
She's very young. She's extraordinarily young. She's 14, but probably one of the best voices I've heard since Aretha Franklin.
Jazmine, you know, such talent coming out of that young lady's body, you know. She's amazing.
Are you serious? Did that voice just come out of that child's mouth?
When she sings it, you believe it. She's a Philadelphia prodigy.
Well, she's the best thing that I've heard for years. Jazmine's just been signed to Jive and is working with Jeff at his Touch of Jazz Studios. I'll let you decide whether to believe the hype or not. Here's a song from Jazmine, Braid Your Hair. She's going to be huge in 2003.
I can feel you everywhere. Can you feel me too? When I braid your hair. When I braid your hair, it's such a grand experience. I try to take such care and make you look like a prince. I want to see